are those of the guests and not necessarily those of the producer. Today's topic.
Should the Bible govern the society in Passion for Truth award-winning program?
Welcome to another edition of Passion for Truth. The presidential candidates are invoking God and religion in their campaigns. When science and reason get shortchanged, how does it affect America's future? Does the fate of the nation lie in the hands of the faithful? That's what we are going to talk about. Dr. Gregory Staunton, President Genocide Watch, also professor at the George Mason University. Formerly, Dr. Staunton is affiliated with the Woodrow Wilson Center for Scholars. Dr. Abul Hassan Ansari, a researcher on critical issues, historical perspectives of Indian events impacting on Muslims in India and abroad. George Nestracek from the management consulting firm Nestracek and Associates, also former staff director with the U.S. House of Representatives. Chuck Woolery from the editorial World Hunger Education, formerly with the World Federalist Association, whose objective is to strengthen the United Nations. And Dr. Daisy Chawla, a scientist who maintains a scientific perspective on psychological and social issues. Welcome you all. Starting with you, Greg, do you have concerns that our political leaders are not keeping an eye on viewing science and its advances?
I certainly do. I think in the last Republican debate in which they discussed this issue and they asked them about global warming, I was shocked. I think there was only one candidate, I think it was John Huntsman, who said that he thought that, 98% of scientists actually think this is a real phenomenon, and maybe we ought to listen to them. All the other candidates were trying to kind of hem and haw and avoid the questions because they have, religious constituencies they don't want to offend. I really don't believe that elections in the United States should be determined by religious beliefs.
Dr. Ansari, if they continue to invoke religion and God in their speeches, do you get the impression that they will not be able to make rational decisions for the country if they were elected as president?
Yeah, I think that's a bad thing. I mean, religion is a personal thing. I mean, it's your personal choice whether you want to be Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Sikh, or whatever. I don't think it should play any significant role in the politics. And I will vote against the candidate who invokes God's name, regardless who they are or what they are.
Disregard for rational and scientific decisions, do you think scientific thinking in the current presidential race?
I'm not sure what question you're asking me, but I take strong exception to the previous two panelists. I think I would sooner vote for a man who invokes the name of God than to one who disparages religion. I want people who are guided by some moral, ethical framework, no matter what religion stands behind that, than people who discount all of that, because I don't know what those people will do in the dark of night when nobody is looking. I want people that have a strong moral compass leading the country, not people that have no moral compass. And if that's manifested by espousing support for religion, God bless them.
If the moral compass is different in each religion, whose compass should rule?
Yeah, I think that what religious leaders do in the dark of the night is sometimes a problem. But the moral, ethical aspect of being a human doesn't have to necessarily be based on a religious belief. That as a scientist, I think that I've got some pretty sound moral and ethical ideas and behavior that are based on the concepts of science. And in fact, I think they're even consistent with the concepts of religion. That when I look at the basic tenet of whether it's Christianity or Buddhism or ethics, be kind to one another. Take care of one another. And as a scientist, everything that I can see points to the same thing. And if we don't do that, our world is going to get very, very ugly. And so I don't think that religion should play a role in politics at all. We have enough craziness going on just between the liberal views and the conservative views. Throw in the religious views, and it's just insanity.
Daisy, are science and are logic and faith entirely different methods for seeking answers?
They are very different. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. I think that the thing about with science has a beauty of its own, and religion, both are necessities. Let me just say that. In the issues that science addresses are how things are made, the what's of things. And with religious issues, they address directly perhaps why things have come to be the way they are. They don't have to be at odds with one another as is presented at this forum. They can certainly coexist. I am a laser scientist and I am religious as well, and I don't find those two to be paradoxical in any way.
But do you think that, Greg, that some of these Republican candidates won't even consider that man-made global warming might be causing climate change?
I find that amazing, frankly. It's somewhat like the candidates who at the beginning of the 20th century denied the theory of evolution. And by the way, there's still plenty of politicians around, including in Texas, who deny the theory of evolution. I would say that one, again, is a scientific theory that is more than proven. It is accepted by almost all scientists. So to me, and I'm a Presbyterian, I'm a believer, there is no real contradiction, as Daisy has said. God can be creating the world through evolution. I mean, we believe in a living God that is still creating. I mean, that's a real way to reconcile these things. But there's also, let's face it, a difference. Religion is based on faith, which is, as it says in the Bible, the assurance of things hoped for. It is not based on, let us say, empirical facts. None of us can say we've seen God's face. Science, on the other hand, has to be based on empirical facts. It has to be based on experimentation and so forth. So there's different methodology here.
How do you respond to what Greg said?
Yes, absolutely. I've read historical accounts of when Darwin presented the theory of evolution, and the backlash within society against it. There's something I need to say first, which is that the way in which we use the word theory in a conversational sense is entirely different from the way scientists use the word theory. When we speak at the dining table and we talk about theory, I theorize something, then you can synonymously use it with the word speculation or conjecture. But the manner in which scientists use the word theory of evolution or the theory of relativity, these are theories that are based on volumes of empirical data, and there is predictive power with these theories, and that predictive power has to turn out to be accurate, to be truthful. So for all intents and purposes, the theory of evolution, the theory of relativity, the theory of quantum mechanics, when all is said and done, they are in fact the last word. They describe everything that we know.
Except we do still call them theories.
We call them theories because it is the scientific parlance to say theory, but it is known to a very high degree of accuracy.
But if these, George, if these candidates come up with explanatory frameworks, and their theories can be tested, their observations can be agreed or disagreed upon, are they making better sense then? Can religion, can God not help them in testing their observations, and they can be scientific as well as religious?
That's a question that's probably best put to and discussed in a community of scientists who can bounce one concept against the other. For the general population at large, it has absolutely no meaning and no relevance. To talk about science being preeminent and all that is forcing the point of view of a tiny minority of the population on the overwhelming majority of the population. Most people, 99%, aren't capable of dealing with the facts in scientific theory, so we don't try to do that. We give them some rudimentary knowledge in school, and then they walk away from it for the rest of their lives. A very small number pursue that to a much greater extent, become scientists, delve into the facts, build the theory, add observations to it, strengthen the theory, but until such time as you can touch it and feel it, it remains a theory, and we're comfortable with that. I, too, was trained as a scientist. I'm comfortable in that world, but I respect the fact that most people can't deal with that, and they choose to explain the world around them in other ways. For many, they fall back on religion and religious concepts, build a construct that's internally consistent and closed and complete, and live within that. I have no problems with that. If they bounce up against the world of the scientist who deals in another realm of facts, you can get clashes there at the boundaries where the two don't understand each other's base of operation. That's a fact of life. But I'm not going to jump into that and say that one is right and one is wrong, and they're both right, and they both live in a consistent set of worlds.
Absolutely wrong. The President of the United States, whoever the next one will be primarily responsible for the security of our nation. The bipartisan Presidential Commission on National Security in the 21st Century that warned us about terrorist attacks on the United States soil had another warning to us. Their second greatest threat was our failure of our schools to teach adequate science and engineering to our own students. I agree with what he said about the lack of Americans having enough basis in science to understand basic science concepts. That is a national security threat. And when you have a President of the United States who doesn't believe in the theory of evolution, trying to combat the infectious disease threat that we face, whether it's the evolution of pandemics, diseases, or the evolution of methodologies of religious extremists or weaponry design, things evolve, things change. Get it. It's just a fact of life. If you think it's a theory, you're actually thinking it's a hypothesis, but in fact, it is a fact.
Does Rick Perry demonstrate a lack of misunderstanding of scientific theory when he chooses to pray for the end of the drought rather than critically evaluate climate science?
Well, there are many ways of looking at prayer. I think that his prayer for the end of the drought was in the old tradition of public prayer that goes back thousands of years, thinking that by praying you are going to somehow affect natural events. Personally, I don't believe in that myself, but I don't think he was using it for that reason. I think he was using it for political reasons.
So when public leaders pray for peace all over the world every single day, we're going to hold them up to ridicule as well?
No, not at all, because that's human agency. Peace is human agency. A drought or weather is certainly not. And so I would argue, in fact, I'm really worried about another group, a group that supports Rick Perry and supported that particular rally. It's a group that is led by the Dominionists, the New Apostolic Reformation, which is led by C. Peter Wagner, a minister who has written a book called Dominion, How Kingdom Action Can Change the World. He was behind that drought rally. His view of the Democrats, of Jews, of Mormons, is that they are satanic. Now, this is the kind of force that is at play in Perry's world. I believe Perry to be a dangerous person. And I think that, in fact, if he is nominated and made President of the United States, we are in serious trouble. I don't think that he is in the same class, say, as, for example, Mitt Romney or others, who I think do accept science and do accept a limited view of their own religious beliefs in how public policy should be made. I think there are many candidates in the Republican fold who could in fact, be president and not reject science. But I don't think Rick Perry is one of them.
You agree with what Greg is saying?
I don't disagree with the notion that there are fringe elements that get involved in the political process. And some of those can be really wacky on both sides of the political spectrum. So I don't disagree with that. But to hold up to ridicule the notion that people want to pray for rain, why is that such a threat to mankind? It is not the notion that, gee, they believe that their presence is going to bring rain down from the heavens. They're expressing a desire for rain.
Okay.
I'll say it is a threat. I'll say it is a threat. Here's why. Belief systems are what determine our behavior. And if you have a belief system that incorporates the concept of Armageddon, of the end days, your behavior is going to be different than if you think that that's all just a story and you actually have some power in understanding that climate changes because of our behavior, and to change that wars happen not because of God or because of religion, but because of our behavior. And if you start to understand that from a scientific concept, you have a chance of preventing and reversing the conflict. If you believe that prayer will stop war, if you believe that prayer will bring rain, your behavior is going to be entirely different and inconsistent with what you need to survive as a species or as a country.
Okay, the crux of the issue, Daisy, here is that if the leaders display a potential for replacing rational approaches with religion on matters of public policy, but prayer and God and scientific theories can coexist. But what if they just replace the rational approaches with religion on matters of public policy on a routine basis?
And I find that alarming. And I do want to address something which George said. There is no harm in prayer if for good things, for peace, for drought, for calming the worries of people. I support that. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But the fact of the matter is that we do have greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. That is a fact. There's no scientific debate about that. Water vapor is a greenhouse gas, by the way. It's the leading. Next is carbon dioxide. And the pre-industrial levels of carbon dioxide were 280 parts per million. Today, they are 380 parts per million. That level, today's level, is greater than the level that this Earth's history has ever experienced in the last, I think it's 650,000 years, the amount of CO2 that we have now. The only thing that sometimes is tested in the scientific community is whether the temperature increase that we've experienced, which is 0.7 degrees centigrade, is the result of the man-made CO2 emission that it has increased or not. But what I can say is this. Look, the surface temperatures have increased. They've increased by almost a degree.
So what's your point here?
If the seawater increases by 2 degrees, the amount of hurricane winds and hurricane strengths that will be seen in the next century will be significantly more than they have been in this century. The effects are already being realized. It's not a theory in the sense that it's speculation. It is based in a great deal of evidence.
How important is science in understanding uncertainty? Because some influences are unbridgeable biological thought, and we are talking about what George raised some issues that we do not know anything about climate control as yet. So how important science is in understanding the uncertainty?
I think science is extraordinarily important. I think it's the reason why we are so far advanced in medicine, for example, as opposed to African faith healers. I think it's the reason why we have developed the internal combustion engine. I think it's the reason why the whole Western world has made such enormous progress. It's science, and it is not religion that has brought that about. It's therefore, in my view, very important that presidents be supportive of science, that they be supportive of reason, and that they not, for example, try to get reports by the National Institutes of Health redacted and censored so that science is taken out of them. I happen to know that under the Bush administration that was done regularly. The science must be done by scientists, and a president who tries to stand in the way of it is a danger to the country.
You think President Bush pursued anti-scientific policies?
I do.
Where did you come on this, Dr. Ansari?
Yeah, he did. I mean, if you look into it, his second election was...
he invoked religion?
Yeah, well, somebody did on his behalf. Otherwise, he was sure going to lose the election, but first election, people believe, was stolen. Second election was based on the religion. That's why I said that invoking somebody wants to become a president, no problem, but you do not invoke the religion in that matter. When you are president for everybody, not for one particular religion.
But the more extreme elements of their religious beliefs seek theocracy, can seek theocracy.
Well, I just said that if, let's say a Muslim, somebody is running as a Muslim for the president, if the guy invokes a God's name, I think he will be the best for the country and for the mankind. I wouldn't vote for him.
Daisy, some influences are unbridgeable by logical thought. Is that what your view is?
Well, in this debate, we're talking about, for instance, climate change, and it just so happens that atmospheric chemistry has so many variables associated with it that it's very difficult to know exactly, to quantify exactly how the Earth is going to behave. But what we do know as a fact is that the levels of carbon dioxide have gone up substantially, alarmingly, and that it would behoove us as a society to cut down on the amount of carbon dioxide that we put in with alternative energy development and with reduced deforestation. And I think that it is in our best interest to do so. Now, with respect to the question that you've asked, there are many things that are not tractable, that one can't necessarily deduce from the facts at hand. That is not a reason to invoke religion. A reason to invoke religion, however, is perhaps for your own sanity, for your own sense of well-being. If there are certain mysteries that exist that mankind cannot explain for the moment, that doesn't necessarily mean that they cannot be comprehended. But I'm not trying to exclude religion. There is a role for religion, and that is with respect to your sense of where you fall in this universe, what role you have to play, and how you interact with other people.
Okay, let me go to Chuck. Chuck, there is nothing wrong in transforming a society into something more in keeping with God's kingdom of justice and mercy. There's nothing wrong. The problem arises if you interpret the Bible literally. Then you could wind up with a politically militant culture.
Absolutely. I'm all for religion in terms of personal development and kind of answering some questions that science will never be able to answer. And but what I think something Greg said really hit home. Science has improved every aspect of our life to degrees we can't even see, from our health care to our water and sanitation systems to our transportation systems to our military to our it's the air we breathe. And when 90% of the American public is ignorant about that, and then turns to religion to answer the questions and to provide the future, it is simple insanity.
What, George, proof do we have when these leaders who invoke religion in their campaigns, they become presidents, and they start interpreting Bible literally? Do you think that would transform the society for good?
Oh, it's irrelevant. It's flat out totally irrelevant. We are a nation of laws. The president cannot impose his religious will on this country. The laws wouldn't allow it. If what he wants to do is consistent with our laws, then fine, we do it. And it has nothing to do with religious precepts. I find it ironic that this country, that we're talking about religious conflicts and clashes and imposing of religious ideas in a country that's the most tolerant of all in the world of religion. All religions flourish here. And let's not forget to Greg's point about the importance of science in our society. Yes, our laws permit the use of private property and private thinking to flourish and develop, and that's been economically beneficial to us. The construct that we have allows science to flourish and benefit us. But let's also remember that in 1776, when the founders of this country put together their ideas for this country, they were all guided by religious beliefs. It was their religious foundations and moral and ethical values, not their scientific training. It was their moral and ethical beliefs that created the construct that we live under today that tolerates everything and everyone.
And in
Don't forget that.
1789, they wrote into the Constitution that the government shall not establish any religion.
Correct.
And that, I think, is the bottom line.
And they were also influenced by the Western cultures of Locke and the scientific basis of rationale that was not religious-based.
Let me ask one more question that is really quite a matter of where science and religion can conflict. And that is this debate right now going on in Mississippi about whether a constitutional amendment to the Mississippi State Constitution should be passed, defining personhood as beginning at conception. If that amendment passes, it will essentially outlaw all abortions. It will essentially take freedom of choice in abortion and in even in Planned Parenthood, even in use of contraceptive, again, away from women. Now that is a very important political consequence of it. The common law, as you may know, I don't know, I am a lawyer, the common law has always held that personhood begins at birth. And if the Mississippi Constitution changes that, because of religious beliefs, and that would be the basis, I mean, it's based on evangelical, largely Southern Baptist religion beliefs, I think we are in serious trouble in terms of women's rights in this country. So in other words, I think religion can be dangerous in certain circumstances.
That would have to feed
We
all mothers
face
to make
so
sure.
many issues in the economy, in the environment, in the health. Do you think our leaders need to push reason as far as they can about the relative effectiveness of various policies and understanding uncertainties? Very briefly, yes or no, starting with you, Greg.
I think it's good if a person has a personal faith, and I think practically all of the religious candidates, all of the political candidates do, because it's a human thing to have that.
Dr. Nassani?
Yeah, faith is a personal thing. I think that there's nothing wrong in being any religion that you choose, but you should not impose those things on other people. If somebody believes in one faith and he's fanatic, it is going to be dangerous for other communities, and that's what we must avoid it.
George?
No, I think the right to one's beliefs is enshrined in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and I think that's perfectly adequate to address the needs of this debate here.
Chuck?
Rational thinking over religious beliefs is essential to our survival.
You'll have the last word.
And I have to echo Chuck.
And that's all the time we have. We'll bring you another edition of Passion for Truth next Saturday and Sunday. Thank you for joining us. Thank you all.
Wow.
If you have any question, comment, or suggestion on this program, please send us an email at mschawla@hotmail.com or write to us at 1011 Salt Meadow Lane, McLean, Virginia, 22101.